My son looked me dead in the eye, held out his hand, and told me to hand over my entire life savings because at 59 years old I was apparently done living and was now just taking up resources that belonged to him. My name is George Vigil. I'm 59 years old, and until last week I thought I had done a pretty damn good job as a father. I worked 35 years in logistics, managing fleets of trucks and waking up at 4 in the morning so my family never had to worry about where the next meal was coming from. I buried my wife, Sarah, 4 years ago. That broke me in places I didn't know existed, but I kept going because of Ethan. Ethan is my son. He's 26. He's smart, handsome, and has a degree that I paid for in cash because I didn't want him starting his life with a noose of debt around his neck. I thought I was giving him a head start. I thought I was building a legacy. I didn't realize I was actually building a monster. To understand why I ended up walking into a bank to nuke my own son's financial safety net, you have to understand the dynamic we had. Since Sarah passed, it's just been the two of us. I downsized the house, sold the big colonial we raised him in, and moved into a comfortable, modern two-bedroom condo. I put the difference in equity straight into my retirement fund. I have a pension coming in from the union, and I have a separate savings account that I treat as my fun money. For the first time in my life, I have time and I have means. I bought a boat, nothing fancy, just a used fishing vessel. I started taking weekend trips. I started living the life Sarah and I had planned to live together. I thought Ethan would be happy for me. I thought he'd look at his old man and say, "Good for you, Dad, you earned it." Instead, every time I spent a dime, Ethan looked at me like I was stealing from his inheritance. It started small, subtle comments during Sunday dinners. I'd mention I was thinking of upgrading my truck and his brow would furrow. He'd say things like, "Do you really need a new truck, Dad? The old one runs fine, seems like a waste of capital." I'd laugh it off. "It's my capital to waste, kid," I'd say, clapping him on the shoulder. Would smile, but it wouldn't reach his eyes. Then came the girlfriend, Jessica. I don't want to blame her for everything because Ethan is a grown man who makes his own choices, but the temperature in the room changed when she came around. They were obsessed with building an empire. They watched those finance gurus on TikTok, the ones who talk about leveraging assets and passive income. They were always talking about hustle culture, yet neither of them seemed to stay in a job for longer than 6 months. They were always consulting or freelancing, which mostly seemed to involve sitting in coffee shops and complaining about the economy. The tension came to a head about 3 months ago. I booked a trip to Italy. Sarah had always wanted to go to the Amalfi Coast, and I finally felt ready to make the trip for both of us. It wasn't cheap, but I could afford it comfortably. When I told Ethan, he didn't ask about the itinerary. He didn't ask to see photos of the hotel, he asked how much it cost. About 6 grand all in, I told him, pouring us coffee in my kitchen. He actually choked on his drink. $6,000 for a 2-week vacation. Dad, that is insane. If you put that 6 grand into a high-yield index fund in 20 years. In 20 years, I'll be nearly 80 or dead, I interrupted, trying to keep my voice light. I'm spending it now while I can walk the stairs in Positano. It's irresponsible, he snapped. The mask slipped for a second. You're burning through equity that could be used for actual future investments. My future is right now, Ethan, I said, a little colder this time, and it's my money. He dropped it then, but the air remained thick. I went to Italy. I had a beautiful, bittersweet time. I drank wine, I ate pasta, I cried by the ocean thinking of his mother. I came back feeling refreshed. But while I was gone, the resentment in Ethan had apparently been festering, boiling over into something toxic. Last Tuesday, he came over unannounced. It was 10:00 a.m. on a workday, but I'm retired, so I was in my garage tinkering with the boat engine. He walked in, not wearing his usual casual clothes, but a suit. It looked cheap, ill-fitting, like he was playing dress-up as a businessman. He had a leather portfolio under his arm. "Hey kid," I said, wiping grease off my hands with a rag, "what's with the getup? You got an interview." "We need to talk, Dad, serious talk, let's go inside." His tone wasn't asking, it was commanding. I felt a prickle of irritation on the back of my neck, but I followed him into the kitchen. He sat at the head of the table, my seat, and placed the portfolio down. He didn't open it. He just clasped his hands on top of it and looked at me with this pitying, condescending expression that made my stomach turn. "I've been looking over the numbers, Dad," he started. "What numbers?" I asked, leaning against the counter. I hadn't offered him a drink. "Your numbers, I saw the receipts from Italy. I see the gas you put in the boat. I see the condo fees." What? I stiffened. "How did you see my receipts?" "I still have the login to your email from when I helped you set up the iPad last year," he said, waving his hand dismissively as if violating my privacy was a minor detail. "That's not the point. The point is you are hemorrhaging cash. You are burning through the family estate on toys and experiences." I am spending my pension, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I am spending the money I broke my back for, and family estate. There is no estate, Ethan, there's my bank account. That's a selfish way to look at it, he said. He actually sighed like he was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. Look, Dad, let's be real, you're 59, you're not going back to work. You've peaked. Your life. It's basically maintenance mode from here on out. You don't need to be expanding. You need to be conserving. I stared at him, maintenance mode. Yes, you have the condo, you have food. What else do you really need? Meanwhile, Jessica and I are just starting. We have opportunities, we have a vision, but we lack liquidity because you're hoarding it and wasting it on Italian wine. He opened the portfolio. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a bank transfer authorization form. I've come up with a solution that works for everyone, he said. I want you to sign over control of the main pension account to me. I'll manage it. I'll give you a monthly allowance generous enough for groceries and bills. But the bulk of the capital I'm going to reinvest into my business. We'll grow the pot, it's better for the family legacy. I looked at the paper, then I looked at him. I waited for the punchline. I waited for him to smile and say he was joking, but he just sat there smug and expectant. You want an allowance? I asked softly. You want to put me on an allowance? It's for your own protection, Dad. You're getting older. You're not thinking clearly about the long term. You're emotional. You're chasing dopamine hits with these vacations. I'm thinking logically. I'm 59, Ethan. I'm not senile. I ran a logistics floor for 3 decades. And now you're retired, he cut in sharp. You're done, you had your turn. Why are you clinging to resources you don't need? It's greedy, Dad. Frankly, it's disgusting. The word hung in the air. Disgusting. My son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I held when he cried over his first breakup, the boy whose tuition I paid while driving a truck with no air conditioning for 5 years, just called me disgusting for spending my own money. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap, it wasn't a scream. It was a quiet metallic click like a lock sliding into place. The love I had for him didn't disappear, but it froze. It hardened into a cold, heavy stone in my chest. He wasn't asking for help. He wasn't in trouble. He was entitled. He genuinely believed that because I was old in his eyes, I ceased to be a person with desires and dreams. I was just a vessel carrying gold that he deserved to harvest. You want the card, I said. My voice was dangerously calm. I want the access, yes, the pension card and the savings login. I'll handle the rest. You won't have to worry about a thing. He smiled then, a shark-like baring of teeth. You can just rest, watch TV, feed the birds. And if I say no? Then you're proving me right, he said, leaning back. You're proving you don't care about the future of this family. And if you don't care about us, why should we come around? You'll be a very lonely old man in this condo, Dad. Jessica and I were going to be very busy. We might not have time for Sunday dinners with someone who sabotages our success. Blackmail, emotional blackmail. He was threatening to cut me off from the only family I had left if I didn't bankroll his delusions of grandeur. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I can do the transfer now if you give me the 2-factor code, or you can sign the power of attorney I have here. I looked at his hands, soft hands, hands that had never calloused from holding a wrench or a steering wheel. I need to think, I lied. There's nothing to think about, he pressed. It's logic. I need to go to the bank, I said. If we're going to do this, we do it right. I'm not giving you passwords over the kitchen table like a drug deal. If you want control, we do it through the official channels. His eyes lit up. He thought he had won. He thought I was capitulating. He interpreted my shock as submission. Okay, he said, standing up and buttoning that cheap suit jacket. That's smart. Official is good. When? Tomorrow, I said. I'll meet you at the main branch downtown at noon. Bring your IDs. Perfect. He walked around the table and tried to hug me. I stood rigid, my arms at my sides. He didn't even notice. He patted my back condescendingly. You're making the right choice, Dad. You'll see, it's time to pass the torch. Get out of my house, Ethan. He laughed, thinking I was joking. All right, see you tomorrow at noon, don't be late. He walked out the door whistling. He actually whistled. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The silence of the condo pressed in on me. I looked at the photos on the fridge, me and Sarah, me and a teenage Ethan fishing. I took the photo of Ethan down. I looked at it for a moment, then I dropped it into the trash can. He wanted the torch passed. Fine. I was going to hand him the torch, but I was going to make sure he grabbed it by the burning end. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up with a pot of coffee and my financial records. I went through everything. The trust I had set up for him in my will, the beneficiaries on my life insurance, the the joint access he still had to an old emergency checking account we used when he was in college. I realized just how exposed I was. I had trusted him implicitly. If he had really wanted to, he probably could have drained a lot of it without my permission already, but his arrogance made him want me to give it to him. He wanted the submission as much as the money. He wanted to be the head of the household. At 8:00 a.m. the next morning, 4 hours before our meeting, I walked into the bank. But I didn't go to the teller line. I asked to see the branch manager, Mr. Henderson. I've banked there for 20 years. Henderson knows me. He knows about Sarah. He knows I'm a steady, boring client who never causes trouble. When I sat down in his glass-walled office, Henderson smiled. "George, good to see you. How's the boat?" "The boat is fine, Dave," I said. I didn't smile back. "But I have a problem, a security problem." Henderson's face fell. "Identity theft." "In a manner of speaking," I said. "My son is demanding access to my accounts. He has threatened to cut off contact if I don't sign over power of attorney and give him my pension card. He believes I am incompetent because of my age." Henderson stiffened. Bankers are trained to spot elder abuse. It's a massive red flag. The air in the office went cold. "He's coming here at noon," I continued. "He thinks we are signing over control to him. I want to make sure that when he walks out of here he has access to absolutely nothing. I want every loophole closed. I want every joint account severed, and I want you to be the one to tell him." Henderson nodded slowly. He opened his computer. "George, if you're saying what I think you're saying, we can do more than that. We can flag his profile. If he's on any joint accounts with you, we can remove him immediately based on the threat of financial coercion. We can lock it all down." "Do it," I said, "and one more thing." "Oh yes. He has a checking account here, doesn't he? The one I opened for him when he was 16. "I believe so, let me check. Yes. It's linked to your profile as a family account, though it's in his name. Is my name still on it as a custodian?" Henderson clicked a few times. "Technically, yes. Since it was never formally separated after he turned 18, you're still a joint owner with full administrative rights." A grim satisfaction settled in my gut. Ethan had been so busy trying to steal my money, he forgot that his own banking foundation was built on my name. "Good," I said. "I want to make a withdrawal." Henderson looked at me, then back at the screen, then back at me. He understood. "How much, George?" "The minimum balance required to keep the account open is $5, right?" "Correct." "Leave him $5, I said. Give me the rest in a cashier's check made out to a charity. Let's say the local animal shelter. Sarah loved dogs." Henderson typed, "That's aggressive, George. He's going to make a scene." "I'm counting on it," I said. "He wants to treat me like a child. He's about to find out who the adult in the room really is." We spent the next 2 hours restructuring my entire financial existence. Beneficiaries were changed. My will was revoked. I'd need a lawyer for the new one, but the bank noted the change in intent. Passwords were reset with voice authorization required. By 11:45, my money was in a fortress, and then I sat in the lobby chair right in the center and waited. At 12:00 sharp, Ethan walked in. He had Jessica with him. That was a surprise. She was wearing sunglasses inside and carrying a designer bag that I knew cost more than my first car. They looked like they were walking onto a red carpet, not a bank branch in the suburbs. Ethan spotted me. He gave me a thumbs up and pointed to the manager's office. He didn't come over to say hello. He just marched straight toward the glass door of Henderson's office, expecting me to trail behind him like an obedient dog. I stood up slowly, buttoned my jacket, and followed them. They were already sitting down when I entered. Ethan was shaking Henderson's hand, putting on his best businessman voice. "Good to meet you, Dave. We're here to streamline my father's assets. He's getting a bit on in years, and we want to ensure everything is managed prudently." Henderson didn't smile. He didn't offer them coffee. He sat back in his chair, folded his hands, and looked at Ethan with the same expression one might look at a bug on a windshield. "I understand," Henderson said. "George has briefed me on the situation." "Great," Ethan said, reaching into his portfolio. "I have the power of attorney forms here downloaded from the internet, but I assume you have your own internal ones." "We do," Henderson said, "but we won't be needing them." Ethan paused. "I don't understand," Dad said. "Your father," Henderson interrupted, his voice sharp and professional, "has spent the last 2 hours securing his accounts against unauthorized access and potential elder abuse." The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Jessica lowered her sunglasses. Ethan's face went pale, then red. He swiveled in his chair to look at me. What is this? He hissed. Dad, what are you doing? I'm engaging in maintenance mode, I said calmly. I'm conserving my resources. Isn't that what you wanted? This isn't funny, Ethan said, his voice rising. We had a deal. You give me the control, I manage the money, that's the deal. There was no deal, I said. There was a demand, and this is my answer, no. You can't handle this money, Ethan shouted. People in the lobby turned to look. You're just going to blow it on stupid trips. You're robbing me of my future. Sir, Henderson said, standing up. Lower your voice or I will call security. I'm not leaving until I get access. Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. He's mentally incompetent. He doesn't know what he's doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. Mr. Henderson, please update my son on the status of his personal checking account. Ethan blinked. My checking account, what does that have to do with this? Henderson looked at the screen. Mr. Vigil, as the joint custodian of the account ending in 4590, your father exercised his right to withdraw funds this morning. Withdraw? Ethan laughed nervously. What did you take $20 for gas, Dad? Petty. The current balance of your account is $5, Henderson stated. Ethan froze. What? $5, Henderson repeated. A cashier's check for the remaining balance of $12,400 has been issued to the county animal shelter per the joint owner's instructions. You stole my money, Ethan shrieked. He jumped up. That's my money, that's my savings. That was family capital, I said, throwing his own words back at him. And I decided it was being wasted. You don't need 12 grand, Ethan. You have a vision, you have hustle, you don't need liquidity. Give it back. He lunged toward me, but he caught himself before he touched me. He was shaking. Give it back right now or I swear to God, Dad. Or what? I stood up to meet him. I'm older, but I'm bigger and I've spent my life lifting heavy things. You'll cut me off. You'll stop coming to dinner. Ethan, after yesterday, I don't want you at dinner. I don't want you in my house. You looked at me and saw a pay stub. Well, the payroll is closed. I will sue you, Jessica screamed. She was standing now too. We will sue you for theft. It's a joint account, Henderson interjected smoothly. Legally, the money belongs to both parties. Either party can withdraw 100% of the funds at any time. There is no theft. Ethan looked at Henderson, then at me. The reality was crashing down on him. He had walked in expecting to gain $500,000 in assets. He was walking out with $5 and a burnt bridge. Dad, he said, his voice cracking. The bluster was gone. The businessman was gone. He sounded like a child again. Dad, please, that money, we have rent. We put a deposit down on a workspace. I need that money. I looked at him. It hurt. God, it hurt to see him panic. Every instinct in my body wanted to fix it, to write him a check to make it okay. That's what a father does. But I looked at Jessica, who was glaring at me with pure hatred. I remembered the way he called me disgusting. I remembered the maintenance mode comment. If I bailed him out now, he would never learn. He would just wait for me to die. You're young, I said, echoing what he told me. You have a future to build. I'm sure you'll figure it out, but you won't do it with my help. I turned to Henderson. I think we're done here, Dave. I think so, Henderson said. He pressed a button under his desk. Security will escort you out now. Two uniformed guards were already at the door. Ethan looked at them, then at me. He had tears in his eyes, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration. He hadn't gotten his way. I hate you, he whispered. I know, I said, but at least I'm not disgusting. I watched my son being escorted out of the bank, his girlfriend screaming obscenities at the guards. I stood in the silence of the office, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had lost a son, yes, but I had regained my dignity, and honestly, I was thinking about booking another trip to Italy, maybe first class this time. After all, I had a lot of living left to do. I sat in my truck in the bank parking lot for 20 minutes before I could even turn the key in the ignition. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had turned the color of old parchment. I wasn't shaking from fear. I wasn't shaking from regret. I was shaking from the sheer adrenaline-fueled realization that the enemy wasn't some faceless corporation or a bad boss. The enemy was my own flesh and blood. I looked at the passenger seat where I used to put Ethan's car seat when he was a toddler. I remembered how he used to fall asleep holding a plastic dinosaur, trusting me to get him home safe. My phone buzzed against the center console. Then it buzzed again, then again, a rapid-fire staccato that sounded like a warning alarm. I picked it up. 7 text messages, all from Ethan. You think this is funny? That was theft, Dad, actual theft. Jessica is crying. Hope you're happy, you just destroyed a woman's mental health. I'm going to the police. Pick up the phone. Pick up. You're dead to me. I stared at that last one, you're dead to me. He had typed it so easily. He probably thumbed it out while standing on the sidewalk, waiting for an Uber because he couldn't afford a premium ride anymore. He threw away 26 years of fatherhood because I wouldn't let him rob me blind. I blocked his number. It was a temporary measure, I knew, but I needed silence to drive home without wrapping my truck around a telephone pole. When I got back to the condo, the reality of the war I had just started began to set in. I'm a logistics man. I know that when you cut a supply line, the enemy doesn't just starve quietly. They get desperate, they raid. I went straight to the front door and engaged the deadbolt. Then I went to the reprogrammable keypad on the garage door. I punched in the reset code. I deleted the code Ethan had used since high school, his birthday, and changed it to the date I met Sarah, a date he wouldn't know. I was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water when the landline rang. Nobody calls the landline except telemarketers and family. I looked at the caller ID. Linda, my sister, I sighed. Ethan worked fast. Hello, Linda, I said, leaning against the counter, watching the birds at the feeder outside. George, what on earth is going on? Her voice was shrill, panicked. Ethan just called me. He was hysterical. He said you seized his assets. He said you're having some kind of episode. What? An episode? I repeated, my voice flat. He said you were at the bank screaming at people, George. He said you drained his business account and told him you were spending it on a boat. He's terrified you've got early onset dementia. He's talking about calling Adult Protective Services. The audacity was so breathtaking I almost laughed. He wasn't just mad, he was spinning a narrative. He was preemptively striking my credibility so that when he came for the money again, he could frame it as taking care of Dad. Linda, I said, keeping my voice dangerously calm. Listen to me very carefully. Ethan tried to coerce me into signing over power of attorney and giving him my pension card. When I refused, he threatened to cut me out of his life. The business account he's talking about was a joint custodial account I opened for him when he was 16. It had $12,000 in it. I put every single cent of that money in there. But he said, I don't care what he said, I cut her off. I donated the balance to the animal shelter. He has $5. And as for my mental health, I just passed a physical last month. I'm not senile, Linda. I'm just done being an ATM. There was a long silence on the other end. Linda has always had a soft spot for Ethan. She didn't see the sharks swimming in his eyes. George, he's your son, she whispered. He said they're going to be evicted. He said Jessica is pregnant. The glass of water slipped from my hand. It shattered in the sink, shards of glass exploding against the stainless steel. What did you say? I asked. He said Jessica is pregnant. That's why they needed the money. For the baby. George, you're going to be a grandfather. You can't leave them destitute. I stared at the broken glass. A baby. For a second, the ice around my heart cracked. A grandkid, a little boy or girl to take fishing. A piece of Sarah coming back to the world. The instinct to protect, to provide, surged up in my chest like a physical blow. If there was a baby, that changed things. I couldn't let a child come into the world in poverty. But then the logistics brain kicked in. The part of me that spent 35 years spotting discrepancies in shipping manifests. Ethan had sat at my table yesterday. He had lectured me about maintenance mode. He had called me disgusting. He had talked about liquidity and empires. Not once had he mentioned a baby. If Jessica was pregnant, that would have been the first card he played. It was the ace in the hole. Dad, we need help with the baby. I would have written a check instantly. I would have bought them a house. He knows that. He didn't mention it because it wasn't true. He was lying to Linda to weaponize her against me. He was inventing a child to manipulate my wallet. The ice around my heart didn't just reform, it thickened. It turned into permafrost. He's lying, Linda, I said. How can you say that? She gasped. Because yesterday he sat in my kitchen for an hour telling me how I was a waste of resources. He told me he needed capital for hustle and investments. He never said a word about a child. If Jessica was pregnant, he would have led with that. He's using you. He's using a fake pregnancy to get you to pressure me. I don't know, George, he sounded so upset. He's upset because he lost his free ride. Tell him if he calls you again with lies, I'll file a harassment suit. And Linda, if you give him money, you're never seeing it again. I hung up the phone. My hands were steady now. The shaking was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I spent the afternoon cleaning the condo. I scrubbed the floors. I organized the pantry. I needed to move to work to do something productive. Every time I stopped, I heard his voice calling me disgusting. What? Around 6:00 p.m. the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. It wasn't Ethan. It was a pizza delivery guy. I hadn't ordered a pizza. I opened the door cautiously. I didn't order this, son. The kid looked confused. Is this George Vigil 2 large pepperonis, unpaid, cash on delivery? I looked at the receipt. It was ordered under the name Senile Old Bat. Ethan, it was petty, it was childish. It was something a high school bully would do. He was trying to annoy me, to cost me money, to disrupt my peace. I didn't order it, I told the kid, handing him a $20 bill from my wallet. Keep the pizza, have a good dinner, sorry about the mix-up. The kid's eyes went wide at the tip. He thanked me and ran off. I closed the door. This was his strategy, prank pizzas. Felt beneath him even for the version of him I saw today. But then I sat down at my computer to check my email and I saw the real attack. I don't use Facebook much. I have an account mostly to see pictures of my old trucking buddies and their grandkids. But when I logged in, my notifications were maxed out, 99 plus. Ethan had tagged me in a post. It was a long, rambling essay. A photo of him and Jessica looking sad, sitting on the floor of what looked like an empty apartment. It breaks my heart to make this public, the post began. But today, my own father, suffering from severe mental decline and paranoia, stole our life savings. He emptied our business accounts. He left us with nothing. We have tried to get him help. We have tried to get him to see a doctor for his condition, but he is aggressive and abusive. He has cut us off because we tried to protect his estate from his own manic spending. We are terrified for him, but we are also terrified for ourselves. We are facing eviction. If anyone can help or knows a good elder law attorney, please DM me. Link to GoFundMe in comments. Below the post were dozens of comments. OMG Ethan, I am so sorry. Your dad used to be such a nice guy. Dementia is a monster. This is financial abuse. Sue him. Donated $50. Stay strong. He was crowdsourcing his victimhood. He was slandering me to the entire community. People I had known for decades, neighbors, old coworkers, were reading this. Some were defending me, asking questions. But many were just buying the lie because a distraught son sells better than fiscally responsible retiree. I felt a vain throb in my temple. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was libel. This was an attack on my character. I didn't comment. I didn't engage. Rule number 1 of logistics: don't argue with the manifest, just check the cargo. I took screenshots. I saved the page as a PDF, then I printed it out. I was just walking to the kitchen to get a glass of wine, Italian red, out of spite, when I heard the noise. It wasn't the doorbell. It was the sound of a key turning in the front lock. I froze. I had changed the garage code, but I hadn't changed the physical deadbolt on the front door yet. I had assumed he wouldn't be stupid enough to come here. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Ethan stood there. He wasn't wearing the suit anymore. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans. He looked disheveled, his eyes wild. He didn't look like a son visiting his father. He looked like a junkie looking for a fix. He saw me standing in the hallway. He didn't flinch. You changed the garage code, he said. His voice was raspy. Get out, I said. I didn't shout, I projected. It was the voice I used to clear a loading dock when a crane was swinging. I'm not leaving until I get what's mine, he said, stepping into the foyer. He kicked the door shut behind him. You humiliated me today, Dad. You made me look like a fool in front of Jessica. You did that yourself, I said, standing my ground. I told you to leave. You are trespassing. Trespassing? This is my house. I grew up here. You grew up in the house I sold, I corrected him. This is my condo. You have never lived here. You are a guest who has worn out his welcome. He walked past me, heading into the living room. He was looking around frantically, his eyes darting from the TV to the stereo system. I sent you an invoice, he muttered. Did you see it? I emailed you an invoice. An invoice? I turned to follow him, keeping a safe distance. For what? Consulting fees. He spun around, pointing a finger at me. I spent hours looking at your finances. I built a strategy. That is professional time. My rate is $200 an hour. You owe me $4,000 for the consultation. I stared at him. He was serious. He actually believed that looking at my bank statement and telling me to give him my money constituted a billable service. You're delusional, I said. Get out before I call the police. Call them, he screamed. Tell them you robbed me. See who they believe, the poor son or the crazy old man. He turned and marched toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Where are you going? I demanded, stepping forward. If you won't give me cash, I'm taking collateral, he spat. Mom's jewelry, you don't wear it, it's just sitting there. That's thousands of dollars of dead capital. The heir left the room. Sarah's jewelry, her engagement ring, the pearl necklace she wore to Ethan's graduation, the silver locket with his baby picture in it. He wasn't talking about assets. He was talking about desecrating a shrine. Ethan, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, don't you dare. Watch me, he said, and he reached for the doorknob of my bedroom. I moved faster than I have in 20 years. I didn't think, I just reacted. I grabbed him by the shoulder of his hoodie and yanked him back. He stumbled, surprised by my strength. He spun around and shoved me. "Get off me, old man." I stumbled back, hitting the wall. A picture frame, a photo of Sarah, fell and shattered on the floor. That sound. The sound of Sarah's picture hitting the floor. Something dark took over. I didn't see my son anymore. I saw an intruder. I saw a threat. I straightened up. I didn't raise my fists. I just walked toward him. I walked with the weight of a man who has moved tons of steel with his bare hands. "You broke her picture," I said. Ethan looked down at the broken glass, then back at me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He realized he had pushed past the annoyed dad zone and into primal protection territory. "Dad, Get out." I grabbed his arm. He tried to pull away, but I clamped down. I marched him to the front door. He was 26 in his prime, but he had no foundation. He had no grit. He was light as a feather. I opened the door and shoved him onto the porch. He stumbled, catching himself on the railing. "Don't come back," I said. "If you step foot on this property again, I will have you arrested. If you mention your mother's name again, I will sue you for every lie you posted online. Do you understand me?" "You're crazy," he shouted, backing away down the path. Neighbors were starting to turn on their porch lights. "You're going to die alone, you miserable old." I slammed the door in his face. I locked the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain lock into place. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. My heart was hammering like a piston engine. I listened to his car start outside, the engine revving aggressively as he peeled out of the parking lot. I walked back to the hallway. I knelt down and picked up the photo of Sarah. The glass was shattered, but the photo was unharmed. She was smiling, holding a fish she'd caught on our honeymoon. "I'm sorry, Sarah," I whispered to the empty house. "I tried, I really tried." I stood up. The sadness was there, heavy and suffocating, but underneath it was something else. Resolve. Ethan had declared war. He had attacked my reputation. He had tried to weaponize my sister. He had lied about a pregnancy, and he had tried to loot his dead mother's memory. He thought I was in maintenance mode. He thought I was just preserving what I had. He was wrong. I went to my office. I sat down at my desk and pulled out a fresh legal pad. I wasn't going to just block him. I wasn't going to just hide. He wanted to talk about ROI and capital. Fine. I was going to give him a lesson in economics he would never forget. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. It was late, but I knew he would answer. "Hello," a gruff voice answered. "Frank," I said, "it's George Vigil." Frank was my old union rep, the nastiest, most ruthless negotiator I had ever met. He retired 3 years ago to run a private investigation firm. "George, everything all right?" "No, Frank, I have a job for you." "What kind of job?" "I need a forensic audit," I said, staring at the screenshot of Ethan's social media post. "I need you to look into my son's business. I want to know every dime he's spent, every loan he's taken, and every lie he's told. I want to know if he's defrauded anyone else." "That sounds heavy, George, you sure?" "He tried to steal Sarah's jewelry, Frank." There was a pause on the line. "I'll start in the morning." "Start tonight," I said. "I'm paying double times." I hung up. Ethan wanted a legacy. I was about to give him one. I was going to dismantle his little empire brick by brick until the only thing he had left was the truth. Frank called me back at 4:00 a.m. I was still sitting at my desk, the legal pad in front of me covered in scribbles that looked less like a plan and more like the schematics of a bridge about to collapse. "You sitting down, George?" Frank's voice was gravel over the phone line. "I haven't stood up in 6 hours, Frank. Talk to me." "It's worse than you thought. It's not just the mooching. It's not just the fake pregnancy or the pizza pranks. The kid is running a shell game and he's using your name as the table." I gripped the phone tight. "Give me the details." I pulled his credit. "It's shot, maxed out, but here's the kicker. I found a filing with a hard money lender in the city, predatory stuff, 30% interest. He took out a $50,000 bridge loan 3 months ago." "How?" I asked. "He has no collateral, he has no assets." "He used your condo as collateral, George." The air left my lungs. "My condo is paid off, the deed is in my safe." "Yeah, well, he submitted a quitclaim deed. It's a forgery, obviously, but it was good enough to get the cash. He told the lenders you were moving into an assisted living facility and he was liquidating the asset. He showed them a fake power of attorney. He's been paying the interest with the money he borrowed, but that ran out last week. That's why he came to you." He wasn't trying to build an empire, George. He's about to get his knees broken by loan sharks or go to prison for wire fraud, probably both. I closed my eyes. My son wasn't just entitled, he was a criminal. He had forged my signature to sell my home out from under me while I was sleeping in it. There's more, Frank said. Jessica's parents, the Sterlings, nice folks, own a hardware chain upstate. I made a few calls. Turns out Ethan pitched them an investment opportunity. Said he was taking over your logistics consulting business because you had, get this, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I felt the bile rise in my throat. He told them I was dying. He told them you were incapacitated. He took 20 grand from them as a buy-in to manage the transition. That was 6 months ago. That money is gone, George. Spent on leases, dinners, and that fake suit he wears. I hung up the phone gently. I didn't slam it. I didn't scream. I felt a strange, cold calm wash over me. It was the calm of a captain who realizes the ship is already underwater and the only choice left is how to save the crew. Except in this case, the crew was me, and the ship was my life. I knew what I had to do. If I went to the police now, it would be a mess. It would be his word against mine for months. He would play the victim. He would claim I authorized it. He would drag this out until I was bankrupt from legal fees. No, I needed to end this. I needed to get him in a room on the record with nowhere to run. I waited until 9:00 a.m. Then I called Ethan. He answered on the second ring. Changed your mind, old mans. I'm tired, Ethan, I said into the receiver. I made my voice sound weak, raspy, like the beaten dog he wanted me to be. I didn't sleep. The police. I don't want the police involved. You're my son. I knew you'd see reason, he said. The smugness in his voice was so thick you could cut it with a knife. You overreacted yesterday. It's the age. I get it. I want to settle this, I said. I can't give you the pension card. The bank locked it. But I can give you the liquidity you need. I can sign over the condo. You can manage the sale. I'll move into a smaller place, maybe an apartment. That's a great idea, Dad, he stammered. He couldn't believe his luck. It's the smart play, equity release. I set up a meeting, I lied. My attorney's office. Noon today. I want everything legal so the bank doesn't flag it again. Bring Jessica and bring her father. Mr. Sterling, why? Because if I'm handing over my estate, I want a witness who understands business. Someone who can vouch that I'm making this decision of my own free will. It protects you, Ethan. Right, smart, okay, I'll call him. He's in town, actually, we'll be there. Noon, I said, don't be late. I spent the next 2 hours getting dressed. I didn't put on a suit, I put on my work boots. I put on dark jeans and a flannel shirt. I dressed like the man who earned the money, not the man giving it away. I drove to the address I gave him. It wasn't a lawyer's office. It was a conference room I rented by the hour at a shared workspace building downtown. It was neutral ground, glass walls, one table, nowhere to hide. Frank met me in the lobby. He was a big man, bald, wearing a trench coat that looked like it had seen better days. He was holding a thick black binder. You sure about this, George? Frank asked. Once we drop this hammer, there's no putting the nail back in. He told people I had cancer, Frank. He sold my house. He's not my son anymore. He's a liability. We went up to the conference room. I sat at the head of the table. Frank stood by the door, silent as a gargoyle. At 11:55 they walked in. Ethan looked triumphant. He was back in the suit, strutting like he owned the building. Jessica was on his arm, looking at me with a mixture of pity and greed. And behind them was a tall, silver-haired man I recognized from photos. Robert Sterling, Jessica's father. Ethan stopped when he saw the room. He saw me in my work clothes. He saw Frank by the door. Who's the heavy? Ethan asked, thumbing at Frank. Independent witness, I said calmly. Sit down. Ethan sat, Jessica sat. Mr. Sterling remained standing for a moment, extending a hand to me. George, Sterling said warmly, good to see you. You're looking surprisingly well. Ethan told us about the diagnosis. I'm so sorry. I looked at Sterling's hand. I didn't shake it. Sit down, Bob, I said. Sterling frowned, confused, but he took a seat. Ethan pulled a folder out of his bag. Okay, Dad. I had a paralegal draft up the quitclaim transfer. You just need to sign here, here, and here. Then we can get you set up in a nice facility. Jessica found a great place near the river. He slid the papers across the mahogany table. I looked at them. Quitclaim deed. Grantor George Vigil, grantee Ethan Vigil. It was a death warrant for my independence. I placed my hand on the papers. I didn't pick up a pen. Ethan, I said softly, do you remember when you were 10 and you stole that candy bar from the corner store? Ethan rolled his eyes. Oh my God, are we doing this? The nostalgia trip. Just sign the papers, Dad. I made you march back in there, I continued, ignoring him. I made you apologize to the owner. I made you pay for it with your allowance. I told you that a man is only as good as his word. Do you remember that? I'm not a child, Dad. Sign the paper. You're right, I said. You're not a child. A child makes mistakes. A criminal makes choices. The room went dead silent, the air conditioning hummed. "Excuse me," Jessica snapped, "who do you think you're talking to?" I looked at Frank, I nodded. Frank walked over and dropped the black binder onto the table. It hit the wood with a heavy flat asterisk thud that sounded like a gunshot. "What is this?" Ethan asked, his voice wavering slightly. "That," I said, "is the logistics of your life, Ethan. That is the manifest." I opened the binder. "Page 1, I said, flipping it open. "The loan application you submitted to Quick Cash Lending 3 months ago." Notice the signature at the bottom. It says George Vigil. "But I was in Italy that day. That's a felony, Ethan, forgery." Ethan's face went the color of ash. He reached for the binder, but I slapped his hand away. "Page 2, I flipped the page. "The collateral listing, my condo, which you don't own. That's mortgage fraud, another felony." Mr. Sterling shifted in his seat. "George, what are you saying? Ethan said you signed those papers before you got sick." I turned my gaze to Sterling. "I'm not sick, Bob. I passed a physical last month with flying colors. I don't have cancer. I have a son who lies." Sterling looked at Ethan. "Ethan, what is he talking about?" "He's confused," Ethan shouted, standing up. "This is the dementia I told you. He's paranoid. He's fabricating things." I flipped to page 3. "This is a bank trace of the $20,000 Mr. Sterling gave you for the business transition. It didn't go into a business account. It went to a DraftKings account, a lease on a BMW, and 3 trips to Vegas." I slid the binder toward Sterling. "Look at the dates, Bob. The day you wrote him the check, he spent $4,000 at a nightclub." Sterling picked up the binder. His hands were shaking. He looked at the bank statements. He looked at the forged deed. Jessica grabbed the binder from her father. She scanned the page. "Ethan, you said that money was in escrow. You said we were waiting for the license transfer." "It's a lie," Ethan screamed. He was sweating now, beads of perspiration popping out on his forehead. "He forged these. He's trying to frame me because he's jealous of my success." Success? I stood up. I leaned over the table. "Ethan, you have $5 in your bank account. You have $50,000 in debt to loan sharks who are going to come looking for my house in about 3 days. You aren't a businessman, you're a con artist, and you're not even a good one." Ethan looked around the room. He looked at Jessica, who was backing away from him. He looked at Sterling, whose face had turned a dangerous shade of purple. "Dad," Ethan whispered. "Dad, please stop." "Stop," I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I'm just in maintenance mode, son. I'm conserving resources. And right now, you are a drain on my resources." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a single envelope. I tossed it onto the table next to the unsigned deed. "That is a restraining order," I said. "It bars you from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my bank. If you violate it, you go to jail immediately." "You can't do this," Ethan cried. Tears were streaming down his face now. "I'm your son. You're supposed to help me." "I am helping you," I said. "I'm stopping you before you steal from the wrong person and end up in a ditch." I looked at Sterling. "Bob, I apologize for dragging you into this, but I thought you should know where your 20 grand went before you gave him your daughter's hand in marriage." Sterling stood up slowly. He was a big man, bigger than me. He turned to Ethan. "Is it true?" Sterling asked. His voice was quiet, terrifyingly so. "Did you lie about his cancer? Did you steal my money?" "Bob, listen, it was an investment strategy I was leveraging." Smack. The sound of Sterling's open hand hitting Ethan's face echoed off the glass walls. Ethan stumbled back, clutching his cheek. "Don't you speak to me," Sterling spat. "Jessica, get in the car." "But Dad," Jessica started. "Now," Sterling roared. "We are going to the police station. You are going to file a statement about what he told you. And then we are going to sue this piece of trash for every dime he will ever make for the rest of his miserable life." Jessica looked at Ethan. Ethan reached out for her. "Jess, baby, wait." What? She looked at him with pure disgust. "You told me he was dying," she hissed. "You sick freak." She turned and walked out. Sterling followed her, pausing at the door to nod at me. "Thank you, George. I'll handle the legal fees for the fraud charges on my end." "Appreciate it, Bob." The door closed. It was just me, Frank, and Ethan. Ethan was slumped in the chair, holding his face. He looked small. He looked like the kid who stole the candy bar, realizing that no amount of crying was going to make the shopkeeper let him go. "You ruined my life," he whispered. "No," I said, buttoning my flannel shirt. "I saved mine. There's a difference." I walked over to the table and picked up the quitclaim deed he had wanted me to sign. I ripped it in half. Then I ripped it in half again. I let the pieces flutter down onto the table like confetti. Frank, I said, escort him out. If he tries to take the binder, break his fingers. With pleasure, Frank rumbled. I walked out of the conference room. I didn't look back. I walked down the hall, took the elevator to the lobby, and walked out into the bright, blinding sunshine of the afternoon. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. I knew who it was. It didn't matter anymore. I walked to my truck. I climbed in and started the engine. The rumble of the diesel felt good. It felt real. I drove straight to the travel agency. I didn't book online. I wanted to talk to a person. I need a ticket to Italy, I told the agent. One way. One way, sir. Are you moving there? No, I said, smiling for the first time in days. I'm just not sure when I'll feel like coming back, and I want to make sure I spend enough money that there's nothing left to fight over. As I drove home to pack, I passed the bank. I saw a police cruiser parked in front of the building where Ethan's office was supposed to be. I didn't stop to look. I had a boat to sell, I had a condo to lease out, and I had a life to live. My name is George Vigil. I'm 59 years old. And for the first time in my life, I'm absolutely free. That freedom tasted like salted sea air and cheap, delicious wine. I spent 3 months in a small rented villa on the coast of Amalfi, waking up when the sun hit my face and sleeping when I was tired. I didn't check my email. I didn't check my bank balance. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't managing anything. I was just existing. But even the best vacations end, and I had one final piece of business to attend to. I had to sell the condo. I wasn't going back to that empty house filled with memories of a son who wanted to cannibalize me. I had decided to move to a smaller fishing town in Florida, somewhere with no winters and no ghosts. I flew back into the city on a Tuesday. Frank picked me up at the airport. He looked grim, which for Frank is his resting face, but there was a specific heaviness to his silence as he threw my bags into the trunk. You look good, George, he grunted as we merged onto the highway. Tan suits you. I feel good, Frank. How's the war zone? Frank sighed, tapping the steering wheel. It's quiet now. But it got loud for a while after you left. Give me the damage reports. Well, your boy Ethan had a very bad month, Frank started, keeping his eyes on the road. After Sterling walked out of that meeting, he went nuclear. He didn't just sue for the 20 grand. He filed a criminal complaint for fraud regarding the investment solicitation. And since I handed over the evidence of the forged deed to the authorities, the district attorney got involved. I looked out the window at the passing city skyline. Is he in jail? He did a weekend in county lockup, Frank said. Sterling's lawyers are sharks. They terrified him. Ethan took a plea deal to avoid a felony trial. He pled guilty to misdemeanor fraud and theft by deception. He's on probation for 3 years, has to do 500 hours of community service, and he has a restitution order to pay back Sterling every cent. And the loan sharks? I asked. Frank chuckled darkly. That was the ugly part. When the hard money guys found out the deed was a forgery and the collateral was worthless, they didn't break his legs. That's Hollywood stuff. In the real world, they just liquidated him. They took his car, they showed up at his apartment and took his electronics, his furniture, even his clothes. They stripped him clean to recoup their interest. He got evicted 3 days later. So he's homeless. Couch surfing, Frank corrected. He stayed with friends until they got sick of him, then he tried to go to your sister's place. I stiffened. Did Linda let him in? She did for a night, Frank said, until he tried to access her laptop to transfer money for groceries. She caught him, she kicked him out, she called me crying, George, she finally gets it, she said to tell you she's sorry. I nodded slowly. It was tragic, but it was necessary. Ethan was a fire. He would burn anyone who got too close to keep him warm. Where is he now? I asked. Frank glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You sure you want to know? I need to know. He's working, Frank said. Court-mandated employment is part of his probation. If he doesn't hold down a job, he goes to prison. What kind of job? Frank pulled the car off the highway, but he didn't head toward my condo. He headed toward the industrial district. The logistics district, the place where I had spent 35 years of my life inhaling diesel fumes and shouting over the roar of forklifts. Frank, where are we going? I thought you'd appreciate the irony, Frank said. We pulled into the parking lot of a massive distribution center. It was a third-party logistics firm, a competitor to the company I used to run. It was a brutal place to work, high quotas, timed bathroom breaks, zero air conditioning on the loading dock. He's here, I asked. Shift change is in 5 minutes, Frank said. Look at the loading bay. I rolled down the window. The heat of the asphalt radiated up, thick and suffocating. The buzzer sounded and a stream of workers came walking out, looking exhausted, covered in sweat and grime. And then I saw him. He looked thinner. His hair, usually styled and gelled, was matted to his forehead with sweat. He was wearing a neon yellow safety vest over a stained gray t-shirt. He wasn't walking with that arrogant, bouncing strut anymore. He was shuffling. His shoulders were slumped. He looked broken. He was carrying a clear plastic bag with his lunch container in it, a security requirement to prevent employee theft. The boy who thought he was too good for a maintenance mode life, the boy who wanted to build an empire of passive income, was now trading his time for minimum wage in the most active, grueling way possible. "He's a picker," Frank said softly. "He runs the aisles, 12 miles of walking a day. Quota is 200 picks an hour. If he misses it, he gets written up. 3 write-ups, he's fired, and the probation officer revokes his freedom." I watched my son walk toward a rusted, dented sedan that looked like it was one pothole away from the junkyard. He fumbled with the keys. He dropped them. He bent down to pick them up, and for a second he just stayed there, crouched on the pavement, head in his hands. I could have honked. I could have rolled down the window and waved. I could have offered him a bridge. But a bridge needs a foundation on both sides to stand, and he had dynamited his side. "He called me," Frank said, "a week ago. He asked if I knew where you were." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were gone," Frank said. "He asked for money. He said he was hungry." "And?" "I gave him a sandwich," Frank said. "And I gave him an application for a trade school. Told him if he learns to weld, he can make decent money in 5 years." "Did he take it?" "He threw the application in the trash," Frank said. "He ate the sandwich, though." I watched Ethan get into his car. It took 3 tries to start the engine. A cloud of black smoke belched out of the exhaust as he limped out of the parking lot. He was 26. He had decades ahead of him. Maybe this was rock bottom. Maybe the sweat and the aching muscles would finally teach him the value of the dollar he had been so eager to steal. Maybe he would rebuild himself into a man I could one day respect. Or maybe he wouldn't. That was the hardest realization of all. As a father, you think you are the author of your child's life. You think you can edit out the bad parts, but you can't. You're just the publisher. Once they're out in the world, the story is theirs to write. "Let's go, Frank," I said, rolling up the window. "I have a condo to sell." We drove away. I didn't look back at the warehouse. The sale of the condo went through 2 weeks later. I got a cash offer over asking price. I put the money into a trust not for Ethan but for a scholarship fund at the local technical college, for kids who wanted to work, for kids who wanted to build things with their hands, not with lies. On my last day in the city, I stopped by the bank to close out my safe deposit box. Henderson was there. He shook my hand vigorously. "We haven't seen Ethan since that day," Henderson told me. "Though we did get a subpoena from his probation officer asking for his records. I assume you know." "I know," I said. "It's a shame," Henderson said, looking genuinely sad. "He had a lot of potential." "Potential is just momentum waiting for a direction," I said. "He chose the wrong way." I walked out of the bank and into the sunlight. My truck was packed. The boat was already towed down to Florida. I had a new fishing rod in the passenger seat and a map on the dashboard. I took my phone out of my pocket. I went to my blocked list. I stared at Ethan for a long moment. I thought about unblocking him. I thought about sending him a text, just one, telling him that I loved him and that I hoped he found his way. But then I remembered the senile old bat pizza. I remembered the fake pregnancy. I remembered the way he looked at his mother's picture on the floor. Love isn't a renewable resource. It can run out. I kept him blocked. I put the phone in the center console. I turned the key. The engine roared to life, a deep, steady rhythm that I felt in my chest. I shifted into gear and pulled out onto the road, heading south. Ethan wanted my pension. He wanted my maintenance mode life. He wanted the torch passed to him before he was ready to hold the fire. He ended up with exactly what he earned: a minimum wage job, a criminal record, and a father who finally learned that the most expensive thing you can ever pay for is a relationship that costs you your self-respect. He wanted to be a self-made man. Well, I finally granted his wish. I made him do it by himself.